keys to how to build your team and to keep them from destroying themselves. I am looking forward to coming and to talking with you. And once again, we are back. We have a very special guest today, Leslie Martinez. She is a virtual business manager. And let me tell you, if you are overwhelmed with work in your virtual consulting business, you need to make sure that you reach out to Leslie. Not only is she able to work with virtual coaching, but she focuses primarily on overwhelmed HR consultants, and she helps you to grow your business. And so we want to go ahead and we're going to bring her on. We've got a very interesting conversation that we're going to be having on today. Today's subject, we're going to be focusing on team development and what actually motivates your team, communication, and things of that nature. So let's go ahead and let's bring in Leslie. Leslie, welcome to the show. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you, Raymond. It's wonderful to be here.
Yes, we've been working on this for quite some time. Leslie and I met on LinkedIn, and she has some very interesting things that she's going to share. I want to highlight something that she mentioned in one of her posts that really grabbed my attention, and that was she was talking about the difference between A-type personalities, and correct me if I'm wrong, Leslie, but A-type personalities and how it is that just because you can do something means that you should not do it. Doesn't mean you should do it. And you need to delegate and pursue those opportunities that you that come natural to you, and how you can be so much more effective. Did I get it right, Leslie? Did I get it? Did I get it?
You did. You did. Yes, type A personalities have a tendency to feel like if I can do it, I should do it. And if you're an entrepreneur, there comes a point where you have to let go in order to grow. And so that was kind of at the heart of my message of that post was talking about even though you may know how to do something doesn't mean that you should.
Yes. That means that you should have a team, and you ought to be able to build your team so that you can get things done. You can't do everything, and so can you maybe perhaps share a time with us where a team was critical in order to get something done, and you actually were able to harness that team?
Yes, I at the time I was working with a small company in their HR department, and we were acquired by a global organization, and so it was really important to see how this global organization was going to meld these two cultures together, and we went from 150 person organization to thousands of people in the organization. So it was really eye opening to me to see how the parent company was going to use team building to blend these two cultures together.
Hmm.
And yeah,
So with
I'm
doing
sure.
that, go. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say acquisitions have become more commonplace now, so that probably resonates with a lot of your listeners.
Yeah. I'm certain. In fact, you said it went from 150 to over 1,000 employees. Is that correct?
Thousands, yeah, it was a
Thousands.
global organization. I
Wow.
mean, talk about big changes
Yeah.
that took place.
Is there one particular piece of advice? Because not everyone is able to work in an environment where they see that type of change take place. Is there one piece of advice that you would share with us that you observe while going through that particular transition, whether it deals with communication, team building, whatever that jumps out and really grabs you through that process? what is it that you would share with us that would help us to implement that in our own?
Yes, I think it was what was really important was because when you are a small company, you're having those one-on-one conversations with each other within the company, and when you go from a small company to a really large organization, where your communication is just huge. And so I think taking the initiative from the parent company to reach out to our company and the managers in our company to really have those conversations and getting to know each other, it was hugely important. So yes, really taking the time to really get to know each other and understand each other's cultures and so forth. It was monumental to a successful acquisition.
Hmm. So taking your time to get to know each other, taking your time to learn is important. I think just the other day we were talking about the importance of names and using people's names
Yes,
in communication. I can imagine that that would be one thing that would also take place. That when you talk with people, get to know who they are and remember their name. The you never say
huge.
I, I'm not good with names. Well, you've got to get used to interacting with an individual, and you've got to get used to making the effort and the attempt to actually communicate with them. But then I also hear you talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion because you said getting to know
Mm.
people, getting to know their differences, and just understanding people. So with that in mind, is there ever? Can you maybe share with us a time where dealing with communication didn't quite go so well because if we're
Mm.
dealing with overwhelmed HR consultants and they need to grow and they need to change and you're trying to help them, maybe perhaps can we look at how communication when it's not done right, what it actually looks like? Because what I want to kind of
Mm.
pull out of this is if we're helping overwhelmed HR consultants and we're helping them to grow, then we need the communication. But can we maybe perhaps look at what bad communication looks like? And maybe that's a form of communication that they did not realize. You see what I mean? Maybe there's something that they
Sure.
didn't catch. So maybe there's a time you can share with us about poor communication and how that looks.
Fortunately, I haven't had a lot of those instances, but one that does come to mind was an individual who I was supporting. This was when I worked in corporate, and this individual was working remotely, and this individual had kind of a reputation of having an attitude of I welcome your ideas, but I like mine better. And so to add to that was there would be times where he would go off the grid and would not alert me to that, and I lost communication with him during those periods. And other individuals in the organization were having the same issue and would come to me asking if I knew where this person was or how to reach out to him. So it really underscored the fact to me that communication or effective communication has to be a two-way street. It can't just be one-sided. And so that was a time where poor communication really came to life for me.
Yeah, I can see how that would definitely come to life because too often times it's the follower, it's the employee that is told they need to have good communication. But here's a situation where there's an executive, there's a higher level person who
Mm-hmm.
needs to also learn the value of communication. And so, really, it's modeled from the top that when you've got great communication from the top, senior most part of the organization, that we can see that it can trickle all the way down. And there can be a disruption at times when those who are in the higher positions do not practice what they preach, so to speak. But we want to make sure that the communication is something that is necessary across the board. In fact, Leslie, one of the things that I've recently come to realize, and I don't know why it never hit me, that we have a lot of the times when we have poor communication, sometimes the core of that is a lack of emotional intelligence. And so we're not able to hold our emotions, we're not aware of our triggers. And so maybe perhaps like in this situation, we retreat, maybe we pull inward, or maybe we just shut down, maybe we lash out. But we really need great emotional intelligence because that's the center of great communication. And then, like you highlighted, we've got to make sure that we reach out to other people simply because we cannot do everything. We cannot do everything. So Leslie, this is one that's off the cuff because we're just in a conversation. This is one off the cuff.
Yeah, shoot.
What would you say is the most important thing for an HR consultant to know and to do? You're trying to help them. What is the most important thing that they should know and what should they actually do? And it may be a little bit out of the scope of what we're talking about, but tell me, what do you think?
Well, can you give me a little bit more of what you mean by what do they need to know? Can you?
Yeah, so that's good. So when it comes to working with HR consultants, and they're working with you, and you're trying to help them grow their team, what is the thing that they need to be most keenly aware of?
I see. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. They need to know that there there is that things have to take their course. They have to take. It takes planning. It takes strategy to really go from being a solo practice and to adding a team. And there are ways that you can grow your business that feel will make you feel more in control than being just overwhelmed by you know different components of your business just kind of working it on by themselves versus all working towards the same goal. And so that to me is what I try to really understand with my clients is where they want to go, and let's get on the same page with how we're going to get there.
Now that's genius. And I want to kind of unpack that a little bit before we continue, because I want to make sure that everyone who's listening and watching understands exactly what it is that you're saying. Because you mentioned two things that I value, and you mentioned systems or procedures or control, really control, and then you mentioned basically methodology, control and methodology. And it's important that whenever you're trying to get on a certain roadmap, you're trying to grow, you're trying to go in a certain direction, you need to have control of the elements because things do happen, but you also need a system. You need a system. And just if I could say, one of the things that I have noticed in the time that I have known you is that you are naturally systemic in the way you approach things. And I think that it's important that if anyone is overwhelmed and they've got their HR consulting company and they're trying to get these things in place and in order, one of the challenges that they're going to have is they need a system. They need a system because this is a part of building your team. You've got to have a system. And not only do you need to have a system, but you need to have a degree of control. And I think that when one of the natural things that you bring to the table are those two things, but that is like something that is needed in all teams. We've talked about this on this particular show before. We've talked about you need to be decisive and results in driven. We've talked about how you need to be interactive and engaging with individuals and other people, and how you share your opinions and build relationships. You highlighted that earlier today. And we talk about working and pacing ourselves. But we've also talked about what you just mentioned before, and that is you have got to have a system. And so building your team, you want to make sure that you have someone on your team in place, in position, who knows systems, and not only who knows systems, but they're also able to have that type of control that is necessary. So Leslie, just before we wrap things up, is there a favorite productivity hack that you have for people who are working in HR?
Uh, yes. So if you're working in HR, you probably have a long to-do list. And my productivity hack is at the end of each day, prepare for your next day. Look at the big rocks, the things that have to get done that next day, and make sure that those are blocked in your calendar. And everything else can fill in the gaps in your calendar. I use a task manager called Todoist, and I use that in conjunction with my Google Calendar. And I plan my next day at the end of the current day, and that has worked really well for me.
That's good. That's called to-do-ist or to-do list.
Yeah, Todoist, IST.
Okay. We'll make sure we put that in the show notes so that people will be able to get that to-do-ist. And we'll also, for those of you who are watching and want to get in touch with Leslie, her contact information will also be there in the show notes. So make sure you take a chance to look at that. Let me just ask you, Leslie, one more question, our final question, and that is, if there was one job, one lesson that your job has actually taught you, that you think everyone should know at some point in their life, whether they're in HR, consulting, or whatever, what's one lesson that your job has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point in their life?
One of the most effective forms of communication is to express interest in someone else. Learn to focus on the other person and get curious, and will take you far in your work and in life.
That's true. Yeah, in life, you need that. Leslie, thank you so much for being with us today. We've got to make sure we get you back on here and get an update, see how things are going. But for those of you, once again, who want to get in touch with Leslie, make sure that you see our show notes. Make sure that you like this show. Make sure that you put a comment in there. But make sure you go by and you look at her contact information there and reach out to her and see how it is that she can be a benefit to you. We want to make sure that we help you to build your team, right? But we also want to make sure that what we do is that we help others as they are building their team. My name is Raymond Johnson. I've been joined here with Leslie Martinez, my guest. You be blessed, and we will see you next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. If you can't reach us then you can always watch the YouTube replay, or you can find us here on LinkedIn. Be blessed. Have a wonderful day.